Welcome, everybody, to the Blood, Sweat, and Tears Fantasy and Betting Show brought to you by Gameday716. As always, I am P-Dubs. Hosting the show today will be Game Day CJ. Game Day CJ, how you feeling today?
Great. I'm ready to get into this fantasy and talk a little bit about betting at the end. So I'm here to answer all your questions about fantasy, anything you need about betting. If there's anything specific that you guys want to talk about or ask me, just write it in the chat. I'll do my best to answer either during the show or after the show.
Awesome. That's what we love to hear. So let's start right out of the gate with some fire. Let's start with quarterbacks. I'll throw up some graphics here at the bottom of the screen, your top 10, but why don't you go through that list and tell us a little bit about those positions?
Yeah. Okay. So my top 10 at quarterbacks, big start. First guy is going to be Josh Allen. Now, that has nothing to do with him being my favorite player in the league at the moment or anything like that, or me being a Bills fan. It's strictly off of the matchup and how he's produced what he did against Washington last week. So for Allen, he's going up against Houston, which to me, and it's a home game. So to me, Allen is going to be fired up, ready to go. And I think that Houston's D is nothing to be worried about. We saw quarterbacks that are not as good put up good numbers against them. One that comes to mind specifically is Sam Darnold last week, 300 yards, a couple touchdowns. So I think Allen for sure will be number one or number two, but definitely in the top, one of the highest producing fantasy quarterbacks of the week.
Do not disagree with you there, CJ. And it's not just because Josh Allen is not just my favorite quarterback right now, and not only is he better than Patrick Mahomes, but he's coming off a great performance, and like you said, he's playing a defense that's not up to the level that the Washington football team's defense is. Not that they were world beaters by any means, but the Texans have some issues, and those issues can definitely be. Josh Allen can go to town on that defense for sure.
Yeah, especially with Davis Webb starting again. I think the offense will have plenty of opportunities to get the ball and move it downfield.
David Mills. I get why you said Davis Webb because he's on the Bills.
Okay. You know what I mean.
That's interchangeable. Does it matter? Mr. Longneck is going to be under center for the Houston Texans.
Thank you.
I got you. Number 2 is not even in my top 10 favorite quarterbacks in the league, but I get why he's on the list. I'm a Patrick Mahomes hater if nobody's picked up on it.
Yeah, I mean, you can hate him all you want, but from a fantasy perspective, he's always top of the order. You know what I mean? 1, 2, or 3. So you can't deny it. You know, as much as
I won't deny the skill. What I'll say is I'm not a fan of the human being.
Yeah. I went 2 with Mahomes here. Again, they're at Philly, but from what I watched on Monday night, Philly-Dallas, Philly D, I saw a lot of injuries. I saw a lot of people go down, and then I also saw them not really being able to tackle. I watched that Dalton Schultz touchdown a few times, and there's 4 or 5 guys who are all right next to him, and when he does the cut back inside, they all pretty much fall to the ground. And that's not indicative of a good defense, especially against Patrick Mahomes. So I think
Patrick Mahomes isn't he's not lightning fast. He's not really that agile either. So if you're getting juked out of your cleats by Patrick Mahomes, it's gonna be a long day at the office.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So if that happened when they try to cover Dalton Schultz, I can only imagine what's going to happen when they try to cover the speedy guys that they got in KC. So yeah, that's my number 2.
Number 3, it looks like you got Tom himself going back to Foxborough for the first time.
Yep. And the reason why I have him so high is because I just think it'll be a revenge game for him. He's already come out and said, I want to crush these guys. I want to go out there and I want to make them feel it, basically, is what he came out and said today. So I think a revenge-filled Tom Brady is something you do not want to mess with. And from a fantasy perspective,
I'll tell you this. I'm glad that this matchup is happening early in the season and it's not week 16, 17, or 18 when this is going down. So he's not feeling a revenge game high going into the playoffs and potentially into the Super Bowl. I don't want jacked up Tom Brady in the Super Bowl if the Bills make it. So
let him
give me this matchup early. Yeah, let him get this one out of the way. Exactly.
I'm with you. Now
we're gonna go out to LA next, huh? Number 4,
What'd you say? Oh, 4?
Matty Stafford out in L.A.
Yes, yes. So next one is Matt Stafford. This was tough because this was between Kyler and Stafford, and I went with Stafford just for the simple fact that I feel as though Arizona defense is not as good as LA defense. So if you stack those two guys up, they're probably going to have similar days. I think they'll have both of them, Kyler and Stafford, will have very good fantasy marks. But at the end of the day, I put Stafford ahead because of the defenses.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the defensive front for both the Rams and the Cardinals is definitely, I would put both of their front fours probably top 5 in the league right now.
Oh yeah.
With Chandler Jones and JJ on Arizona's defensive line, and knowing what the Rams defensive line can do, we know firsthand from the Bills facing them last year that Aaron Donald can just completely take over a game. So it should be a really good matchup, and I don't
Jones.
disagree with you. Yeah, and so can Jones. But I don't disagree with you on your pick. I think Matt Stafford is he's having quite the season. I don't expect that to slow down anytime soon.
Right. So that kind of leads us to our number 5,
Yes.
which would have been Kyler Murray. And so I kind of just explained the same thing for Kyler. And I think that'll be a high scoring game. So I think both teams will have the chance to put up points. And that's why I put them where they are.
Yeah, because I think that matchup in particular, especially with the caliber of the quarterbacks on both sides, you're going to end up with a situation, like you said, where it's going to be a shootout. And after I just got done talking about defensive lines, I'm sure the listeners are like, well, if their defensive lines are that good, how the hell is it going to turn into a shootout? Well, it's quite simple. You're not going to rush more than 4 against these quarterbacks, because if you do, they're going to make you pay and pay bad. So I expect to see, 4 to 5 man rushes most of the game. These guys will probably stay clean unless that 4 to 5 man rush gets home. But them having a little bit of time in the pocket to pick apart some zones, which both have shown the ability to do, I think that your 4 and 5 could be interchangeable depending on how the defensive lines play. But I agree with you that they're both right there at 4 and 5, regardless of who comes first, who comes second. Staying in Los Angeles, though, you got Justin Herbert, or like I like to refer to him, Josh Allen's test tube baby, right? Like it seems like he is a spawn of what Josh Allen was from an arm strength standpoint. Definitely had a little bit more notoriety coming out of college than Josh Allen did, but that's just based on the paths they took to get to the league. So tell us a little bit about why you put Justin Herbert in at number 6, behind Kyler Murray and right ahead of Lamar Jackson.
I feel like based on the performance that he had last week, he came out, had a huge game against Kansas City. Now, Kansas City is ranked, I want to say, number 31 or 32 in stopping opposing quarterbacks as from a fantasy perspective. So it's not like they were a huge team to go up against, and you kind of expected him to play well. But still, he came out and played well. First 2 weeks, not so much. Didn't have the spectacular numbers that everybody drafted him in the hopes that he would get. But I think that this week against Las Vegas, they got a good defense, but at the same time, you can put up points against them. And I think with the weapons that Herbert has around him, especially Mike Williams starting to actually have his breakout year finally, I think that really helps him out. And I think he'll have a great game tomorrow. Or Sunday.
Completely agree. Yeah, Sunday. So then moving on next, speaking of Lamar Jackson, you've got Lamar Jackson here at number 7.
Yes. So this is a little bit of a harder one. At Denver, I thought, in my mind, Denver's a better defense than most of these guys that we were referring to in the top 8. But I think that given his rushing prowess and how much they like to run with him and how much he likes to run himself, I think that'll give you a solid floor for a quarterback. And when you have a rusher and he can put on those points from a rushing standpoint too, you give yourself a very low floor or a very high floor. So the ceiling is there where he could put up 4 or so touchdowns. But even if he doesn't, you're going to get almost probably 60 to 80 yards rushing and a touchdown or 2, which will still keep you in at least top 10 of fantasy points scored for quarterbacks.
I 100% agree with you there. So looks like we got Dak Prescott up next, who is having another great start to a season. Tell us a little bit more about what made you slate him in at 8.
Yeah, so I would love to go higher with Dak. I have him in a lot of leagues. But the only thing that is kind of keeping me from putting him up higher is two things. One, Carolina defense has played very well so far. Now, again, the matchups that they've had have not been anything to write home about. But at the same time, they have a
Credit
good
where it's due.
defense.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, at the same time, they have a good defense, and Dallas seems to be running a lot more. With Elliott, with Pollard, and they seem to be making a focus on getting the run game going early. And not that that's a bad thing for Prescott, but he's not throwing 50 times a game like he was last year, in those comebacks, stuff like that. And so that's where those big games aren't happening yet. I do think that he will have more big games than not. And I think that
here's why. Yep, I 100% agree with you, CJ. And here's why I think that you're right on the money with this, and people are going to want to pay attention to this in the coming weeks. You mentioned the fact that Zeke and Pollard have been really trying to get going early on here in the season, and I think that's by design. If they break off a couple of successful runs, you're going to start seeing some heavier boxes. And if that happens, Dak being the quarterback that he is, with the weapons that are on that team, I would be very afraid to load a box against the Dallas Cowboys team with Dak Prescott taking snaps behind center. And if the running game gets going enough, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And that does not bode well for the rest of the NFC East.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So those two things mixed together is why I had Prescott at 8.
Awesome. Russell Wilson coming in at 9.
All right. Wilson I'm almost at the point now. Again, this is a tough matchup at San Francisco. But the reason why I have him here because Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson. Now, if he comes out and plays like he's done the past 2 weeks, then he's going to fall next week in the rankings. I'm telling everyone that right now. But I think Russell Wilson, people want to write Seattle off. It's early in the season. They're getting it back in shape. They're starting to get everything back together. And I just think that give him a game because he's always played well when he's on the ropes or when the game's close, and he's always pulled them out. And for whatever reason, he didn't pull it out last week in Minnesota. They were up at halftime or a little bit before halftime, and they just weren't really able to produce much going into the second half. So I think this will be a game Russell will have a lot, and I think that San Fran was just beaten by Green Bay fairly easily. So I don't think that San Fran is as scary as a defense as everybody thinks they are. Now their line is great, but the back end definitely needs some help, and I think that's where he'll feast with Lockett and Metcalf.
I agree with you yet again. Surprise! All right, so number 10, we got Jalen Hurts, a.k.a. and Carson Wentz away.
Yes. As you can see, I picked Hurts over Cousins, Carr, Burrow, and Rodgers. And I know that might surprise a lot of people. That even surprised me. But going back to what we talked about with Lamar, the rushing floor is always key to success as a quarterback for fantasy. So if Hurts can come out and put up 60 to 80 yards rushing, mixed with 2 touchdowns at least, that's going to be top 8 fantasy play for quarterback guaranteed. So if he comes out and does average, he will be in the top 10. If he puts up better than average, then he could have a chance to break that top 5 in fantasy quarterback scoring. So I think that's why I like them. And then the matchup against Kansas City, just he's gonna have to produce. And even if he doesn't produce, there's going to be plenty of time for him to score. They didn't take him out of the game last week until I don't even think they took him out of the game at all. So they were down 3 scores at fourth quarter, and they still kept him in. So that's a good sign that they are willing to keep him in, not pull him, and give him the reps. And that's always good from a fantasy perspective. So that's why I got him at 10.
Agreed. So let's move on to the running backs. And it looks like coming in at number 1 should be no surprise to anybody. We've got Derrick Henry.
Yeah. So Henry's my unquestioned number 1 for a few reasons. Obviously, they're playing the Jets, right? And that is a great matchup for any running back, for any offensive skill position player, really in general. But so that mixed with the fact that it looks like Julio Jones and AJ Brown will both be out, so they're going to be using a group of pretty much no names at wide receiver. That being the case, they're going to need to run the ball to score points, to blow them out like they're anticipating. They're going to need to run a lot. So I think they'll hand him off. They'll feed Henry, and he will have a good game. 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards at least. So we'll see. But that's kind of what I'm thinking.
So knowing Derrick Henry is the beast that he is, quick question before we go on to your number 2 in running backs. Knowing that it's a 17-game season this year, does Derrick Henry top 2,000 yards rushing?
It's
a tough one.
It's tough. It is. Yes. I'll say yes.
I could see it. I can't close the door on it unless he
like maybe 10 yards short. Like that's Calvin Johnson a few years ago. Or it wasn't Calvin. He actually got 2,000, but there was maybe the year before Calvin had gotten. Or why did I say Calvin Johnson? Who is it? Who's the last guy to rush for 2,000? Wasn't it Tennessee guy? That's why I'm just.
You talking about Chris Johnson, CJ2K?
There you go. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Now I remember one season he was like 10 to 15 yards short of that 2,000, and so he had like one game he needed to get it. So it could be that, or he could easily break it. With 17 games, as long as with the wide receiver position being in the way it is in Tennessee, they got it. They're going to feed him. So
and I don't know if you've heard. I don't know if you heard this report, but I can't recall off the top of my head where I read it, but I'm sure I'll touch more on it in the coming days and weeks. I'm hearing that there's a little bit of a rift going on, or there's something between the relationship between Julio Jones and the coaching staff in Tennessee right now. I don't know how much validity there is to that, but let's say that there is some validity to that. I would imagine that we'll see a heavier dose of running out of the Tennessee Titans, especially knowing what the Jets are going to give you. There's no need to risk your quarterback getting injured or receiver. Like if you could just run the ball and make it a quick game and still be productive, still put up points, I say you do it. So I'm in agreement 100% with you about Derrick Henry. But your number 2 is one of my favorite running backs to watch, and he has been since coming into the league, and that's Alvin Kamara. Tell us a little bit about why you chose him for number 2.
Yeah, again, usually unquestioned top 3 running back every week. So it's really a no-brainer with him a lot of times. The New York Giants matchup is a favorable matchup to me. Because it really doesn't matter. He'll kill you passing, catching a ball, or he'll kill you running. And the fact that he has such a high floor because of the pass catching ability that he has, again, that puts you above most other running backs, because most other running backs aren't looking at 8 to 10 targets a game, which he does on a pretty consistent basis. So that's a big reason why I feel like he'll be number 2 for sure.
Awesome. So let's go to number 3. You have Austin Eckler.
Another guy who, again, was hurt last year, but another guy who gets a lot of work in the passing game. And I think last week it was something ridiculous also, where he had 8 to 9 catches or something like that, maybe a little bit more. And very involved. They use him a lot. Usually if the game is like if they're trailing, they use him more. So I would hope that even if they come out like beating Las Vegas pretty easily, I'd hope they still use him a good amount. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think Eckler, again, with the floor for his pass catching abilities, it leaves him above most other running backs who do not receive that kind of love.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. Number 4, Aaron Jones. I mean, you had to take somebody from that team, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You're
my guy, Aaron Jones. I'm a big, don't tell him that, because they'll probably go off this week if he finds out.
Right.
No. But anyways, Aaron Jones, one of my favorite running backs to watch play. He is not the biggest, not the fastest, but man, does he love to have a ball in his hand and hit people and go. You know what I mean? And it's a fun guy to watch.
What that running style reminds me of, actually, that you say that?
Yeah.
That description, if I wouldn't have known you were talking about Aaron Jones, it sounds a lot like Zach Moss.
Yeah, I agree.
That goal line run last week.
Yeah, Moss will surprise you, and I think Jones does the same thing. Jones, one of the major places where I think Jones beats Moss is his. Obviously, one has been in the league a lot longer. So as time comes with being in the league, Jones knows defensive formations. And so when he sees, say the run is just a little short handoff to the left, if he sees overload to that left side, he's going to make the cut and go back inside, and he's going to go away from where his blockers are. But that's going to be, and he just knows to do things like that because of his awareness and because of how long, he's been out there doing his thing. I think over time, he's just become one of the better running backs in fantasy. So I love him. I think he'll have a good week, even though it's Pittsburgh. I think he'll be involved enough, either running touchdowns or receptions to give you a good enough week from a fantasy perspective.
Awesome. So number 5, Alexander Mattison.
All right. So I put Madison here because it's a switch between him and I'm pretty sure Cook has practiced the past 2 days in a limited capacity. So if you have Cook, that's going to be something you're going to want to watch out for just to make sure that he's going to play and he's going to be active. If not, then Madison again will put up probably the same amount of points he did last week, which was 20. I want to say about 24 points in a standard PPR format. So again, that's almost identical to what Cooks will do for you. I think Madison is obviously not on the same level as Cooks, but the amount of looks that they give him and the amount of touches and opportunities they give him is very similar to when Cooks is in the game. So if you're a running back, you're going to produce as long as you can pretty much be above average. You're going to produce in that scenario. So that's why I like him. If Cook does play, I'm putting Cook above Eckler and Jones, just so everybody knows. He'd be my third.
Nice. This guy's from the college that is literally 2 blocks away from where I was born. Way back when in 1985, in the town of Columbus, Ohio. Talking about the Ohio State University's own Ezekiel Elliott. You have him at number 6. Talk to us a little bit about Zeke.
Yeah, so I know there's a big panic in the first 2 weeks with him because of Tony Pollard. And I think on Monday night, he really came out and silenced a lot of those critics because he went on, I think it was 92 yards, 2 touchdowns. That would be, and then I want to say 3 catches for about 20 yards. So he had a good fantasy day on Monday. And I think again, like they said during the broadcast, was that he hears that. He hears that people are saying Pollard's faster and Pollard should be in there. And then so he wanted to give him a reason not to say it. And I think he played well. And I think he averaged over almost 6 yards a carry that game. So if he can carry that over into this game against Carolina, again, another good defense. But I do think he'll be involved from the goal line. And I think he'll get enough carries to make him viable.
So you're 100% accurate, by the way, just to give everybody a little bit more context before we go on to the next running back here in our list, and that's that Zeke has improved in every game since week 1. In week 1, he ran 11 times for 33 yards, a 3-yard per carry average. In week 2, he ran 16 times for 71 yards, a 4.4 average with 1 touchdown. In game 3 against the Philadelphia Eagles, he ran 17 times for 95 yards, a 5.6 yard per attempt average, and his receptions increased game over game too. 2 receptions week 1 for 6 yards, 2 receptions for 26 yards in week 2, and then 3 receptions for 21 yards in week 3, with also getting the 2 receiving, the 3 catches out of 3 targets is what I'm trying to say. So he's shown constant improvement week over week, and there's no reason to believe that won't continue. So definitely see why you chose Zeke Elliott for number 6. Number 7, though, our Lake Erie brothers and Nick Chubb. Tell us a little bit about Nick Chubb. Shout out Browns fans, by the way.
Him and Elliott were really a toss-up. Both of them are they're good. They're good from a touchdown perspective. They get a lot of touchdowns, but both of them also have somebody waiting in the wings, trying to take away opportunities, trying to take away those touchdowns, trying to take away touches. And when I say that, I mean Kareem Hunt. Last week, Kareem Hunt went off for Cleveland. Now, do I think that's going to happen again where Chubb doesn't do as well and Kareem Hunt goes off? No, I don't think so. I think Chubb is the unquestioned number 1 in that offense. And I think most games he's going to have at least a touchdown. And you'll get those games once in a while where Kareem does lead and Kareem isn't the best runner on the team from a fantasy perspective once in a while. But for the most part, Chubb's going to be consistent. He has been consistent week in and week out. If you have him, trust him, he will do well again week.
Awesome. So after Chubb at number 8, you got DeAndre Swift.
Yes. So Swift had a great game last week against Baltimore. Baltimore, we know, is a good defense. So that really opened the coach's eyes to how well of a running back he is. And I heard a report that came out a few days ago that said as a result of that game, he will, moving forward, be getting more touches. Now, he was already fantasy relevant without those touches. Now, if you add those touches onto it, I think he could easily be top 10 running back for the rest of the season if he continues
On the
with the touches that,
on.
with the touches that exactly with what they're telling they're going to give him. If they do that and they continue that, he definitely will be one of the better running backs to have.
Gotcha. I love the insight, CJ. I only know a fraction of what you know about this stuff, so I'm getting as educated as all of our listeners are. Number 9, you have Najee Harris.
Yep. So
is that because you don't believe in Ben Roethlisberger's ability to throw the ball?
Clearly, yeah. I mean, he doesn't seem to be able to throw more than 15 yards. So what I wish I had, hold on one second. Let me see if I can find the stats from last week because I played Najee last week and every freaking other pass play was a pass to him pretty much. And I just was like, are you kidding me? And so he ended up, his final stat line was 14 rushes for 40 yards, 2.9 average, not that great. 19 targets, 14 receptions, 102 yards. That is incredible from a PPR fantasy perspective. If he goes out and does anything similar, he will be a top 5, easily top 3 running back. The only reason I keep him down a little bit lower is because I'm pretty sure this week they're going to get Deontay Johnson back. And if anybody knows how the Pittsburgh offense works, it's a very short game, and Deontay Johnson is one of their favorite guys to go in the short game. So when you bring Deontay Johnson back in, you're going to take away those opportunities that Harris had coming out of the backfield. So he's going to take a little bit of a drop in usage from a receiving standpoint, I think, with Deontay coming back. But 14, we also saw 19 targets. That's pretty high usage, and
even if those go
anything like that, it's great.
Even if you give 5 of those targets or 7 of those targets to Deontay, you're still ending up with 10 to 12 targets for Najee Harris, and I mean he's going to catch most of those. And that's not even speaking on. We know just based on last season alone that Deontay Thompson has some issues when it comes to dropping the ball, and if we see any of that when he gets back in the lineup, I would imagine that they're just going to go right back to Najee. They're going to throw quick screens, dump offs to the flats to Najee Harris and let him do what he does after the catch. To give a little bit more context on his receptions from last week, of those 14 receptions for 102 yards rather, he was averaging over 7.2 yards a reception. That is mind-blowing for a running back.
Yeah, it's great.
That's incredible. So moving on to number 10, to round out your running backs, you've got Joe Mixon, who plays ball with baby Joey.
Oh, right. Joe Mixon, honestly, I probably should have put him a little bit higher. I'm not a huge fan of Mixon. I think that he is great from a volume standpoint. Now he gets the volume because there's nobody else there. But for some reason, you're getting 20, 25 carries, and I'm not seeing huge games yet. Now, I don't know if that's a result of who he's played or whatnot, but I'm not seeing full advantage being taken of these opportunities. Now, again, you will always be in the top 10 of fantasy if your guy is getting not top 10, but easily top 20. If your guy's getting 25 carries a game, most likely. Again, if they're above average, they should be producing with 25 carries.
And here's the thing: no offensive coordinator in this league is going to keep feeding a running back the rock if they're not being productive. So if you're getting 25 carries, chances are it's because you're being efficient too. You're not getting 25 carries running 1.2.
No, you're not blowing anything away, but there's nobody else around there that's going to do anything close to that. And so again, he might not have a huge game tonight against Jacksonville. It's a Thursday night game. Those games are usually a little bit slow, a little bit sluggish because of the short week. And so I'm not a huge fan of playing guys on Thursday night anyways. But he, again, if that's your guy, I say he's an unquestioned RB1, very high, lower RB1, very high RB2. And if you have to play him because again, that volume's there, and from that volume he's produced so far this year. Nothing crazy, but he's definitely solid. So I would keep him in your lineups if you have him.
For sure. So we're going to jump into wide receivers next. And as we do that, and then we're going to go into tight ends after that, We'll try to pick up the pace a little bit here with the wide receivers and tight ends. I know people are probably eagerly awaiting some of your betting picks as well, so I want to make sure we have enough time to squeeze that in. So let's talk about the wide receivers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you both names. I'm going to give you two at a time, and you kind of just give us a little bit of insight into each one. You've got Devontae Adams at number 1, and you've got Cooper Kupp at number 2. Give us some reasons for that placement.
Yeah, so Adams at 1, I think he's still your unquestioned number 1 wide receiver overall. Again, Marquez Valdez-Scantling just went down again with some sort of injury. So he's going to be really the only guy there. I know Lazard came back last week, but for the most part, Rodgers is really, looks to Devontae a lot. And so he gets a lot of volume. And I think that is great for any fantasy wide receiver. Kupp, on the other hand, has really popped this year with Stafford. They've got a great chemistry. Woods, Jefferson, all those other guys really kind of have fallen. Deshaun had a great week last week for the Rams, but Kupp has really seemed to have the connection with Stafford better than any other receivers.
Speaking of which, Gameday716's own Noah actually informed us earlier today that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this is what we were talking about in the group chat earlier, Cooper Kupp is on pace to have over 2,000 yards receiving for the season.
Yeah, it's incredible for now, yeah. And I think that, if he can keep that up, maybe he pulls it off. I think Stafford is going to be really good there. I love them. Yeah. I love Stafford there. I love that pick. I love him playing there. So I think they'll be good. And I think from there we'll see him just continue to go up and up and, be the unquestioned number 1 guy in that offense. And, I think for the most part, that's exactly where he should be. So.
Exactly. So number 3 and 4, we have the speed demon himself, Tyreek Hill. And at number 4, we have who the Bills almost loosely you could consider traded to the Vikings in order to get Stephon Diggs in the form of a first-round draft pick, which was then converted into Justin Jefferson. So Tyreek at number 3, Justin Jefferson at number 4. Talk to us a little bit about that. I cannot hear you, Game Day CJ. It might be your microphone. Still can't hear you. Still can't hear it. There we go. You're in. You're in. We got it.
Sorry about that, guys. Technical difficulties. Yeah, last week with Tyreek Hill, 5 catches, 56 yards. Nothing too impressive, but again, with that all-world speed, I think Kansas City is going to come out and they're going to want to win badly because of all the talk that's going on about them not being what they were the past 2 years. And so I think Hill will come out firing. I think they'll go deep a few times early, and Hill will most likely benefit from that. For Jefferson, solid guy week in and week out. One of Cousins' top targets. To me, plays better than Thielen has played from a fantasy perspective, so you got to keep him in there. He's WR1 for sure, guaranteed. Jefferson, I got at number 4.
Nice. Number 5 and number 6. Buffalo's Stephon Diggs. And going back out to LA again, we have the LA Chargers, Keenan Allen. Tell us a little bit about those two.
So Stephon Diggs, again, last week kind of got outshined by Sanders, but at the same time, he's been pretty solid from a PPR standpoint, week in and week out. He's the top guy there, no matter how you slice it. Even with Sanders there, even with Beasley, he's still the top guy. He will still, at the end of the season, have the most catches and the most yards on Buffalo, on the Buffalo stat sheet. So if you're worried about Diggs at all, don't be.
The thing about Stephon Diggs, especially in week 3, when Josh Allen kind of went off on the Washington football team and decided to re-enter the MVP discussion for the second consecutive year, the deep shot to Stephon Diggs right in the end zone, the one that bounced off his fingertips, he had a defender draped on him. Questionable. It could have been defensive pass interference based on the timing of getting to Diggs before the ball got there. But he catches that. He's the leading receiver on the day. So just to put into perspective for people, Stephon Diggs catches the ball, and he was the leading receiver for the Bills on that day. So don't sleep on Stephon Diggs at all, especially coming on this matchup with the Houston Texans, who, what are they really going to do to defend against him? Anybody that they take away, you're going to leave the other guys wide open. So
and then we got Keenan Allen real quick. Again, just a very consistent player, has been that way for 5-6 years now. One of the Herbert's top targets, Mike Williams, is really starting to catch on now. But at the same time, Allen is very reliable and could easily have a 2-touchdown game, any game. And, so you want to keep him in. You want to keep guys like that in your lineup. Solid floor, never gets less than about 10 to 11 points. And then he has the upside for a 25-point game every couple weeks. So for me, if I have Allen, I'm keeping him in the lineup and I'm sticking with him.
Love it. Love it. So number 7 and 8, we have DK Metcalf coming in at number 7 and Calvin Ridley of the Atlanta Falcons coming in at number 8.
Yeah. So Metcalf had a great week last week. Even though Seattle lost, he was targeted a lot more. They were able to move the ball pretty easily when they threw it to him. Now they also need to get Lockett involved. Also, I'm kind of tired of this switching back and forth between Lockett and Metcalf. I think Wilson needs to be able to get both of them involved early and both of them have a good game, and there'll be no way that they could lose a game if they do that. But for whatever reason, they're kind of switching it up. I don't know if they're playing matchups or what they're doing, but I think Metcalf again has a good matchup, and I think he will produce. Ridley, on the other hand, same thing. Doesn't really, not same thing, but a little bit different. Doesn't really have another guy in the offense that's taking away targets.
Yeah,
Pitts
not
still
anymore.
has not. Yeah, Pitts has still really not taken off yet this year. Now it probably will come, but he hasn't done it yet. So I think Ridley's consistency, high floor, and a guy you want to make sure is in your lineups because again, he's going to produce because he's going to have the volume. So that's why I go with him at 8.
I agree. Even though his numbers haven't been there quite yet, it's only a matter of time for him for all the reasons you pointed out. So number 9, we have Chris Godwin, and at number 10, rounding out our wide receivers, we have DJ Moore.
Mm-hmm. Chris Godwin, again, seems to be, Brady loves his slot guys. Godwin's plays a lot in the slot, does very well in the slot. He's always open, it seems like, whenever Brady throws him the ball, and he's one of his favorite targets. It's just, he's always open. He's always there. He's always making plays. So you got to give him credit where it's due. He's out there producing and he's out there performing. And so he's going to continue to move up if he continues to play how he's played. DJ Moore, again, not similar to Ridley, where he doesn't really have much competition. And now with Christian McCaffrey going down for a few weeks, you got to assume that those 8 to 10 targets that McCaffrey was getting will go to more, at least half, maybe even 4 of those targets, 3 or 4. But on what he's already averaging 8 or so targets a game, 11 to 12 targets, that really bumps him up even more. So I like him a lot. I think he is one of the only options in the passing game. And I think Darnold is slowly coming along with the team to the point where he is going to be a good quarterback there. So I think DJ Moore will be he's my number 10. And I really like him this week. And if you got him, I would throw him in the lineups.
Awesome. So looks like next we're going to go into tight ends. But before we do, and before I put up on the screen what your top 10 are, I want to give an honorable mention to a tight end that I actually chose to start in our fantasy league this week and promote him off my bench because he has shown me that he can be a quality tight end in most fantasy leagues. And you already know where I'm going with this, that amazing touchdown catch from Josh Allen. Dawson Knox. Do we think Dawson Knox has the potential to become a top 10 fantasy tight end before the end of the season?
I mean, yeah, with the tight end position being the way it is, and that there's the guys at the top and then not much else towards the bottom. The bottom 10 guys are always going to switch out between one has a good week, the other one doesn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think Knox could easily fall in there as long as he continues to play and get the separation that he's getting. I think he'll have no problem getting there eventually.
He's definitely on pace for a career year, so we'll see where that goes. But speaking of that, we'll jump right into your top 10. And at number 1, we have Travis Kelce. Number 2, we have Darren Waller. What made you choose Travis Kelce over Darren Waller? Although I don't really have to guess that hard, but I'll let you tell the people.
Yeah. Again, Philly defense did not stop tight ends last week at all. If you watch that game, Dalton Schultz got 2 touchdowns, and they weren't that hard. And, so I think Darius Slay is a good cornerback, played very well on Cooper last week. But as far as Philly covering the tight end, they had Dalton Schultz. They had a very hard time doing it. So if Dalton Schultz gave you a hard time, Kelsey is going to give you 5 times harder of a time. So that's why he's number one, pretty much always unquestioned number one tight end. Waller is catching up to him, but still not there from a volume perspective yet, where he's getting the yardage totals, high yardage totals, at least this year. I love Waller. He's a huge part of that Las Vegas offense, and if they want to win games, they got to go to him, and he's got to make plays. So I think he's number 2. I think he makes a lot of plays this week, and I think both those guys, again, solid 1-2, and they'll probably be 1-2 for the rest of the year, most likely.
Awesome. So I know I alluded a second ago to the fact that I have Dawson Knox in our league, and I pushed him into a starting role and took him off my bench for this week. So we know that I have Dawson Knox. Do you have any idea who has Travis Kelce? Oh, wait, that's also me. Stacking the deck.
Nice,
All right. Enough self-plugging. Number 3, we have George Kittle, and number 4, you've got TJ Hawkinson. I was very high on Hawkinson coming out of the draft.
Yeah. I mean, and he has honestly played very well this year, and you really, if you drafted him, you got to be happy with the returns on him. Now, Kittle had a great game last week. He is one of Jimmy G's favorite targets with 9 targets, 7 receptions, 92 yards. Now, from a PPR standpoint, that's good. That's pretty much top end you can expect from a tight end. He's getting involved. He's getting the yards. Now the touchdowns will obviously come. The big plays will come. But, if that's one of his lower games right there, then from a fantasy perspective, you got to take that all day long. Hawkinson, another guy who is looking at a lot of targets. Again, there's not many people there in Detroit that Jared Goff can throw the ball to. So he looks Hawkinson's way a lot. And I am just realizing that he only got 2 catches last week. Now, that is not indicative of what he has done most of the season, because in week 2, Hawkinson had, let me find it. Hawkinson had 9 targets, 8 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. And so that shows you 9 targets led the team in targets. So if Swift didn't have such a big game last week and they didn't keep going to him, I think they would have had to go to Hawkinson. And I think Hawkinson is a solid top 5 tight end week in and week out. He's going to have some weeks where he doesn't get the yardage totals, but for the most part, there's not many other tight ends that you can start over him.
Nice. So number 5 is actually the guy that I benched for Dawson Knox, Rob Gronkowski. And at number 6, you have Mark Andrews.
Yeah, Rob Gronkowski, again, we're seeing a career renaissance here where he's coming back, playing great.
Still not watching film.
Yeah, well, that's debatable. But
yes. I swear, he actually came out. I don't know.
I know he said that, but I swear I read something after that said he was joking or something like that, which I could see him joking like that too.
Even if he was joking, can I just continue to believe that he really doesn't watch film? Because that's badass.
Yeah. Right. For
sure. So Gronk at number 5. Why'd you put Gronk over Mark Andrews?
Yeah, I think Gronk this week, another revenge game for Tampa against New England. So I think Gronk and Brady will want to get a lot of touchdowns. Mark Andrews, he's been solid, but he just hasn't had that big game yet or any big touchdown games. So he's going to be in that, easily top 5 tight end. But, depending on touchdown totals will depend on where he lands. He gets 1 to 2 touchdowns, easily top 3. No touchdowns. He's going to land in between that 8 and 5. So that's why I went with that. And I think both of them, again, solid starts. You can't go wrong putting either one of them in.
Yeah, just for a little bit more context on the Mark Andrews front, you can't forget that he has Lamar Jackson throwing the ball to him. And I know a lot of the narrative around Lamar Jackson ever since he came into the league was that, that he's a running back playing quarterback. Well, I just want to let everybody know that his quarterback ELO is almost on par with where Ryan Tannehill's is right now. So if you think Ryan Tannehill is even a halfway decent quarterback, but you're slamming Lamar Jackson because you think he's a running back playing quarterback, you might want to hold your horses on that one, because I think by the end of this season, we're going to see that Lamar Jackson does have the ability to pass. But when you have the athleticism that he has, why would you not use it? But to piggyback back to Mark Andrews definitely has a quality quarterback throwing him the ball, and he's definitely well deserving of being number 6 on your list. And that moves us to number 7 and 8, which is Denver and Noah Fant, and Atlanta and Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. So Denver recently just lost KJ Hamler. I think his name is. He was one of the top 3 wide receivers in targets. So they just lost him. Jerry Judy's already been out for a couple weeks. Will still be out for a few more weeks. And
he's on bench on IR. Don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So I think that, because of those reasons, and Fant is a good tight end. I think he'll, take targets. I think they'll want to feed him targets to get him moving across the middle to open up a lot more for the wide receivers. And I think he'll be solid this week. Now it's another one of those, if he doesn't get the touchdowns, then maybe, he's going to be in that 10 to 7 mark. But if he gets touchdowns, he's going to easily be, top 6, top 5 tight end. So, and then you got Pitts. Again, Pitts has the potential every week to go off. And so you're just waiting for that to happen.
You know who Pitts reminds me of? And I don't know what it is about him, but I don't see any direct correlation. It's not like their game is so similar that it's just like I see him when I look at Kyle Pitts, but I'm going to say a name and you tell me if you see the similarities like I do. Shannon Sharp.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know what it is about Kyle Pitts, but he reminds me so much of Shannon Sharp. It's not funny. I don't know much about Kyle Pitts' personality, so I can't attest to that in comparison. But I don't know if it's just the way he looks or carries himself on the field, but every time I see him, I think of Shannon Sharp right away. So let's move on to your number 9 and number 10, and then we'll move on to your week 4 bets before we wrap things up. Number 9, you have Tyler Higbee, and at number 10, you have Logan Thomas, converted quarterback.
Yeah, Logan Thomas, again, great story. Love to hear it. Love to see him doing good. He was solid last week for Washington, I'm sorry, that was 2 weeks ago when he played very well.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so
last week
obviously
he got put through the Buffalo Bills buzzsaw and got
yes. But that's his
forced
comeback
fumble courtesy of Trey White.
But he's looking at about 7 targets a game, before last week or whatever. So I think if you're looking at 7 targets from a tight end perspective, nothing special. He's going to have those games too, where if he gets a touchdown or 2, he's going to be in top 5. But from 7 targets, if you can get 5 catches for 70 yards or something like that, that's solid from a fantasy perspective in the tight end. In the way the tight end fantasy is set up now, where it's very barren at the bottom and the top guys pretty much are everything. So he can do that. He'll be a solid play. If you have somebody else, I'd probably keep Logan Thomas in over anybody below these guys.
Nice. One thing I want to mention about Logan Thomas, I know you have him here at number 10, and I'm sure there's a little bit of hesitancy about Logan Thomas after that fumble from last week against the Bills. And to those people, I would say this. Yes, he fumbled the ball, but 9 out of 10 times, if your big, bulky tight end is trying to fight for a couple of extra yards, you want to see that. You want him to see him secure the ball a little bit better, but I think you'd rather have a guy that is going to fight for every inch he can get than someone that's going to hit and get hit and just try to go down on the ground and protect the football. You could do both at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So let's jump out of fantasy and let's go into your week 4 bets. We'll run through these and then we'll wrap things up and tell people what they can come to expect for the rest of the week and in future episodes.
We're going to run through these real quick, but you guys keep your ears open because this is going to be one of the better segments, because going forward, I would love to have these conversations about betting, and I do a lot of betting myself. Obviously, I'm not, I don't go crazy with it, but this will kind of be able to, if you guys are teetering between team and team, this will kind of be able to help you. These are my thoughts. These are who I feel like are the best picks from we'll go through the Thursday night game, and then we'll go through my top picks from the 1 o'clocks, 4 o'clocks, and then we'll talk about Sunday night and then Monday night.
I've got to say, before we get started with this and we wrap everything up in a nice little bow for everybody, we got about 15 minutes until the Thursday night game starts. I think you are the only person on the entire internet right now that is giving your pick for this game 15 minutes before kickoff, and I think that's remarkable. So let's dive right into it. So
Yes.
I'm gonna go through these. I'll scroll through. I'll call them out to you. You tell me who you like through them. Let's start with Thursday's game. Right, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Cincinnati Bengals. Who do you like in this one?
Jacksonville Jaguars versus Cincy. We're gonna go. It's Cincy minus 7.5.
Yeah, your audio just went out again.
Good.
Talk again.
Nothing. Good.
Now you're good. You're good.
All right.
Yep.
Sorry about that. I keep putting my phone down on the aux cord, so it keeps taking it off. Anyways, one of my big bet tonight, I took Bengals minus 7.5 at home against the Jaguars. I think that Jaguars have not shown anything, and I think the Bengals have consistently improved week by week. Going out and beating Pittsburgh last week was huge for them, for their morale. I think they'll continue to play well. I think I'm not convinced it'll be high scoring, but at the same time, I think the Bengals will win by more than 7.5. So we'll see what happens with that tonight.
Awesome. So let's move on to the Washington football team versus Atlanta Falcons. Currently, we got Washington at -1. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah. So I'm fine. We can talk about the Washington one real quick. I would probably, off top of my head, Washington's favored -1.5. I would, man, that's a tough one.
That's a very tough one.
I would probably stay away from that one. But
yeah.
I'm going to go with the home team. So I'm going to probably go with the Falcons. My other top picks for the 1:00 games.
Let's do that.
Yeah. First one, I really like. Which one do I really like? I really like that Saints game. Saints Giants, New Orleans -7.5. Yep. Saints played very well against New England last week, so I think the Giants will not be as much of. I think New England is better than the Giants, so I think the Giants will have an even harder time stopping New England and scoring on them. Saints D is really good. I think they'll continue to roll this week. Big game, Titans-Jets. I think Tennessee beats them by 7 or more. Jets have, again, not showed anything. So just another, those are your games where you're looking for the teams who really aren't that good against teams that have pretty much proven themselves already. So those are my big ones. Chiefs-Eagles, another one. I'm going heavy Chiefs. KC -7. Eagles didn't show me anything last week, Monday night, and I think they'll be on a tear because
here's
of how angry they feel.
Let me ask you this. This is one of the games where I'm just looking at the lines here. The over-under being at 54.5. You like the over or the under with Kansas City and Philly, knowing that Kansas City is probably going to be out to prove something after starting the season 1 and 2. I can see them easily putting up 5+ touchdowns, which
I
puts
could see them putting up 35 to 40 points by themselves.
Yes. So do you think that this is a game that we're going to see the over hit on?
Yeah, I'm not a huge over-under guy. We'll get into that a little bit more next week when we got a little bit more time. I can kind of go through over-under.
Because there's a lot of there's a lot of context behind that we could talk about when we really
But in that situation, my gut would tell me, the over is the move to go. I think Chiefs could easily put up 30, if not more, and then the Eagles are going to have to score. So I could see 54 being a good over pick.
Yeah. So do you have any other picks off the top of your head here coming up on the Sunday slate of games, or even heading into Monday? Because the game I want you to pick last because of the interesting the interesting odds on this one. I want to jump into Buffalo as a 17-point favorite, and I want to get your thoughts on that. But that's what we'll end with, and we'll wrap everything up. So before we do that, are there any other games on the weekend slate or even on Monday that you like?
Is there any other games on Sunday? I was just going to run through the Sunday, the 4 o'clock games real quick. Just one game that really I like the most. I'm probably going to go Packers -6.5 against the Steelers. I think the Steelers have not shown anything. TJ Watt being out. I think the Packers will play very well. That's my 4 o'clock. And then I'm
a novice at this compared to Game Day CJ, but me doesn't even do this would absolutely take the Green Bay Packers at 6.5 because we've seen what the Pittsburgh Steelers can do. The Pittsburgh Steelers should have been curb stomped by the Bills in week 1. And by the grace of God or whoever it is that the Steelers pray to, like, they were gifted a W. And if the Bills and the Steelers played today, the score would be like 38-7. So I anticipate the Packers are absolutely going to smash the Steelers. And it wouldn't shock me to see it be a 2+ score game.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. 17's huge, and you got to love that Buffalo is getting that love, right? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So
you got to love it. You got to love it. So
I love that. That's great for me. I'm happy about that.
Would you take Buffalo at 17? You think they're gonna...
I probably will just to have some fun. I usually stay away from Bills games because
the fan in you wants to believe that they're capable of things.
In my head.
Yeah.
Don't
you want to listen.
Way
yeah, I feel you. But for this one, for this one, my biggest thing going into this game, knowing that they're giving the Bills 17 points on this one.
I love that.
You gotta, as a Bills fan, you gotta love it. The last time the Bills were involved in a game where where it was at least 16 points was 16.5 points in favor of the Vikings in Josh Allen's rookie season, where they went on to beat the favored Minnesota Vikings. Now, I'm not saying that the Houston Texans are about to roll into Buffalo and even come close to sniffing a W. That's not what I'm saying at all. But just for some added context, how far we've come. Just 3 short years ago, we were 16.5 point underdogs going in and completely destroying narratives. And now here we are, 17 point favorites. You love to see it, right, CJ? You got to love to see it.
Nationally, finally. It only took 20 years.
My entire adult life.
Exactly.
I turned gray before they started to be elite.
Don't tell me that. Anyways, so for the final 2 games, we'll do the Sunday night and then we'll do the Monday night. Bucks Patriots, Tampa -7. I'm going Tampa heavy. Again, we've talked about this in fantasy a few times. Brady is going out for revenge in New England. He will go off. I promise you that. Tampa will crush them. New England does not have a good defense. Mac Jones is progressing, but not to the point where he can even hold anything to Tom Brady right now in that offense. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going Tampa on that one. Raiders, Chargers.
In the vein, real quick, before we jump to Vegas and Chargers and wrap things up, the Tampa Bay New England game, over unders 49. I really like the over in this one, especially considering the fact that Tom Brady's probably going to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns.
But this is a game where I could see it 35-10. I could see that.
See, in my head, I had 35-17, so I was thinking, 52 points. But it could go that way too. I think it's either going to end up something like 35-7, 35-10, or it'll be 35-14, 35-17. But I anticipate a 2-score victory for Tampa Bay. So let's jump over to that last game, that Monday night game, because I want to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders for a quick second before you give your pick on this one. Yeah. And when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders, I'm still not sold. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm not sold on the Raiders yet. We've seen this with the Raiders, where they'll show flashes of being a above average team only to fall back down to earth. And I know that you've got Derek Carr playing out of his mind right now, but I just feel like this is eventually going to come to an end for them, and the fairy tale ride is going to cease to exist, and they're going to fall back down to earth. I think that they're one of the pretenders of all the 3-0 teams left, because of all the 3-0 teams, we have Las Vegas, we have Denver, we have Arizona, we have the Rams, we have the Carolina Panthers, and that's it, I believe. And I think out of those 5, the Raiders are the weakest of the 5.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of debatable. I'm not sold on Denver. I'm not sold on Denver, but obviously those other teams I think are legit.
I would put Carolina, Arizona, and the Rams in a class of their own as the 3-0 teams. I don't think any of those 3 are the best teams in the league right now. I think that belongs to a couple of 2-1 teams. But I think that your Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders are the 2 pretenders in that group of 5. And they're going to be they're going to be discovered here at some point. And I think that Baltimore could show Denver what's up on Sunday. And I think that the Chargers could show the Raiders what's up on Monday. So with that being said, at being favored by 3 with the Chargers, what's your pick for this one?
I'm going Chargers heavy. I love Herbert.
Yeah.
I love how they played last week.
Yeah.
Again, there's something to be said, though, for blowing your wad against Kansas City. A lot of teams come out, play a hard game against a hard opponent, and they win it, right? And that's their Super Bowl. And they're like, oh, their guys go all crazy after the game. And then they come out the next week.
Arizona Cardinals against the Bills from last season, cough.
And then they come out the next week and they're flat, right? So
exactly.
So that's happened plenty of times, and I've dealt with it in betting. So that's something to watch out for. But off my gut, I think Chargers are better. I think Chargers are at home. I would go with the Chargers.
And because I think that the Raiders are going to get punched in the mouth and come back down to earth, I personally would take the under at 51.5. I don't see this being a blowout. I think one of the teams are going to play better defensively than the other. I think right now that the Chargers, especially what they have going on in the secondary, I'm calling it right now. I am projecting that we see a Derwin James interception at some point in the game, probably in the second half. You heard it here first. An interception by Derwin James in the second half of the Raiders-Chargers Monday Night Football game. I'll probably be live tweeting for that game in the second half, just so I can call it out when it happens, or I can eat my crow when it doesn't.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we put a nice little bow on this weekend's matchups. CJ, what are your closing thoughts as we enter into this week of fantasy and betting? What are some last thoughts that you have for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys just keep an eye on the show. I know that it's just starting out. But I love fantasy. I have a lot to talk about with that, and I think you guys could learn a lot from it, and also it could help your teams. So keep an eye out for that. Betting is just another fun thing we like to do with it. And last week, I think I got 12 out of 16 picks right. So hopefully we can continue on that, and we'll get you guys, some good picks, and we'll go from there.
I love to hear it, and I'm sure they do too. And we're going to continue to work on the way that the show flows. This show is definitely a work in progress. It's not the main Tuesday show that's on at 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central. This is one of the side shows that we're starting up this week. We have CJ's fantasy show, which is amazingly titled the Blood, Bets, and Beers Fantasy and Betting Show, presented by Gameday716. I don't have a cool, catchy name for my preview show where we review some film, and we're going to talk about the upcoming game on Saturday nights. I honestly think I might go with what I went with last week, Game Day After Dark, because that show's probably going to be something that's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. Get your last fix of football before we get into Sunday and we get into that entire slate of games. We'll have guests on from time to time, whether I have CJ jump on late at night on a Saturday night and talk about the upcoming Bills matchup, or maybe Todd or Noah jump on, or maybe somebody that isn't even affiliated with Gameday716 jumps on. But a lot of good content coming your guys' way. We definitely appreciate your time as always. But that's going to be enough for the debut episode of Blood, Bets, and Beers Fantasy and Betting Show, hosted by Gameday CJ and presented by Gameday716. We hope that everybody has a very safe and very productive remainder of the week. We will be back on Saturday night for the preview show, Game Day After Dark, which I will be hosting. CJ, what are you doing Saturday night? You want to jump on that in 15-minute cameo?
I got you. We can do that.
All right. We'll have Game Day CJ jump on. After I break down some film, we'll go into a little bit of additional detail about what exactly is going into making the Bills a 17-point favorite against the Houston Texans. But we'll leave you guys with that. We'll see you on the next show. Don't forget to tune in every Tuesday to our main show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere you can find Gameday716. But until then, we wish you all well. We will talk to you soon, and go Bills.
All right. Thanks, guys.